exclusive photographs, by far the best yet, are in from the Titanic. For most of this century, that huge passenger liner has been a dead ship, resting in an ocean grave that, until these past few days, no one had seen. Now, scientists have even seen the iceberg damage that doomed the Titanic.
A recently discovered old camera from the ocean depths has unveiled shocking photos of the Titanic, revealing hidden truths about its devastating end. These pictures show that human errors, not just mechanical failures, were key in the disaster. This darker side of the Titanic's story has been hidden until now. From its construction in 1909 to the tragic fates of its sister ships, there's a lot we haven't been told. What horrifying secrets do these photos hold? Let's uncover the chilling truth behind these haunting images. Titanic's forgotten chapters. The Titanic was one of 3 big ships called the Olympic-class liners, which also included the RMS Olympic and the HMHS Britannic. Sadly, each of these ships faced their own tragic fates. The Olympic caught public attention because of the excitement around its construction. The Titanic became famous even before it was finished, with many eagerly waiting for its first voyage. Little did they know, this first trip would also be its last. At that time, the White Star Line, which owned these ships, was doing very well and had no idea of the disaster that was coming. Early photos of the Titanic, taken before it sank into the North Atlantic Ocean, take us back to those early days, showing the ship in all its glory. When it was being built, the Titanic was considered an engineering marvel. A dedicated team with a clear vision worked together to make sure everything was perfect. They had a budget of over $3 million, a huge amount back then, equal to about $310 million today. The Titanic was enormous, measuring 882 feet and 9 inches long and 92 feet and 6 inches wide at its widest point. It was 104 feet tall. These numbers may not fully show its grandeur, but the photos give us a glimpse of its magnificence, matching all the hype. The Titanic seemed destined for disaster from the start. Even before it set sail, the ship was linked to several unfortunate events. During its 2-year construction, 8 workers lost their lives in various accidents, casting a shadow over its beginning. By March 31, 1912, the Titanic was finally ready, drawing global attention. Crowds, including international media, gathered to see this massive new ship, with many hoping to be among the first to board. However, the excitement soon turned to fear in an unexpected way. After years of anticipation, the Titanic started its maiden voyage on April 10, 1912, in front of about 100,000 excited spectators and journalists from around the world. But this wasn't its first trip into the water. The ship had previously sailed from Belfast, where it was built, to Southampton on April 2, 1912. This journey was highly publicized as a luxurious trip meant to carry thousands, including some of the richest and most influential people of that time. The Titanic's trip from Southampton, England to New York City was watched by the whole world, but no one expected the disaster that was coming. The journey was carefully planned, starting at Southampton, then going to Cherbourg in France, Queenstown, now Cove, in Ireland, and finally across the Atlantic to New York City. The return trip was to go from New York to Plymouth in England, back to Cherbourg, and then to Southampton. During this time, there was a big problem. A coal strike made it hard to prepare for the journey. The coal needed for the Titanic was taken from other ships in the White Star Line. Even though the strike ended before the departure, there wasn't enough time to fully restock the coal. The Titanic set off, unaware of the dangers ahead. The Titanic and the SS New York near miss. The Titanic was built to carry up to 3,547 people, including 905 first-class passengers, 564 second-class passengers, and 1,134 third-class passengers, along with 944 officers and crew members. Sadly, many of these brave crew members later lost their lives trying to save passengers during the disaster. From the beginning, there were bad signs. Deaths during construction, chaos at departure, and the coal shortage all hinted at the tragedy to come. Imagine the Titanic, huge and grand, getting ready for a trip that would become famous for all the wrong reasons. As it was leaving the dock, a small incident happened that might have changed history and saved lives. The Titanic pulled away. It pushed a lot of water, causing the nearby SS New York to break loose and drift close to it. People watching were scared as they saw the SS New York coming close to the Titanic. Luckily, the situation was handled well, and the Titanic continued its journey. But after the ship sank, some wondered if this close call with the SS New York was a warning that the Titanic should never have left. Photos from the Titanic's first trip show how popular and large the ship was, reminding us of a time before the famous shipwreck. But as the Titanic set off, another problem was brewing. A fire in the coal storage area. This shocking news, that there was a fire on the Titanic before it even started its first trip, shows how dangerous things were. The fire had been burning for 10 days before the ship left. For over a century, people have debated how much this fire contributed to the Titanic's fate. Visible damage from the fire on the ship's side was clear, signaling potential trouble from the start. After the tragedy, investigations showed that the crew had been fighting this fire in the coal storage for days, but couldn't put it out before the disaster happened. The fire weakened the ship's structure, which may have made it more vulnerable when it hit the iceberg. This tragic event has led to endless questions and debates about what could have been done differently. It's still not clear what exactly started the fire on the Titanic, but the damage it caused is undeniable. This fire weakened the ship's structure, although it wasn't the only reason the ship sank. The damage from the fire played a big part in what eventually happened to the Titanic. A reporter named Sonan Molan found some old photos in an attic in England. These photos show a long, dark smudge on the side of the Titanic, about 30 feet long. This mark is where the fire damaged the ship. Interestingly, this damaged spot was exactly where the Titanic later hit the iceberg, causing the tragic sinking. This raises the question, could the outcome have been different if the fire hadn't weakened the ship? More shocking details about the Titanic's story are less known, but upcoming revelations are bound to be surprising. Each new piece of evidence, like the photos found by Sonan Molan, gives us more insight into the conditions and decisions that led to the disaster. As we learn more, it becomes clear that the sinking of the Titanic wasn't just a ship hitting an iceberg. It was a complicated story of human errors, natural forces, and bad timing. Into the night, the Titanic sailed towards its icy fate. The Titanic and the iceberg that changed history. But the worst part wasn't just the fire or the iceberg. The iceberg itself was a major player in this tragic story from over 100 years ago. It was the iceberg that caused the supposedly unsinkable Titanic to sink into the icy waters of the Atlantic Ocean on the night of April 14, 1912. The ship was sailing through the dark, unaware of the dangerous icebergs in the area, which could destroy even a ship as strong as the Titanic. People are curious about where this massive iceberg came from and its journey before it hit the Titanic. Some think the iceberg started at the Jakobshavn Glacier near Disko Bay on Greenland's west side, forming around 1910 or 1911. From there, it probably traveled north, carried by the West Greenland Current. As we consider the Titanic's journey, more questions come up. Captain Edward John Smith, the ship's commander, and his crew knew they were entering dangerous waters. That year, the sea ice was more widespread and further south than usual. Plus, the Titanic got several radio messages from other ships warning of large patches of floating ice and many icebergs ahead. Despite these warnings, the ship kept going toward New York. The story makes us think about the decisions made during the voyage. There were many signs of danger. The Titanic's first trip was filled with ignored warnings and hidden dangers, making us look closer at what exactly went wrong. A critical message was sent to the Titanic, warning the crew about thick ice floating in the ocean, right in the path the Titanic would take. The next day, the Titanic saw another ship, the SS steamer Rappahannock, sailing the other way. We don't know if the Rappahannock told the Titanic about the ice, but the Rappahannock got badly damaged by the ice, so they might have warned the Titanic about the danger ahead. On the day the Titanic sank, it got several warnings about the ice ahead. The first warning came from the Coronia, mentioning big icebergs, smaller ice chunks called growlers, and lots of ice in the water. Despite the serious warning, Captain Smith of the Titanic just said thank you and didn't do anything more. Another warning came from the Dutch ship Noordam, again talking about lots of ice in their path. This message also tried to highlight the risks of continuing their journey, but once again, Captain Smith responded politely, but didn't seem worried. Throughout the day, the Titanic received more warnings about dangerous icebergs directly in its path, but the crew didn't take these seriously either. Eventually, the Titanic hit a huge iceberg, leading to a disaster that took over 1,500 lives. Years later, an interesting find was made at the bottom of the ocean. A vintage camera belonging to Seaman W. Wood, who was a captain and liked taking photos, was discovered. Just 2 days before the Titanic's tragic voyage, Wood saw a giant iceberg that impressed him. He took a picture of it and noted its location, which happened to be the same place where the Titanic hit an iceberg. While we can't be sure if it was the same iceberg, the locations being the same make it seem likely. One of the first accounts of that terrible night came from Dr. Washington Dodge, a well-known person from San Francisco who worked in medicine, banking, and politics. He boarded the Titanic at Southampton with his wife Ruth and son Washington Dodge Jr. for its first voyage. After the disaster, while on the rescue ship Carpathia, Dr. Dodge wrote a letter describing what happened. His handwriting showed how upset he was. His account gives a clear picture of the chaos during the Titanic's last hours. That night, a deadly crash changed everything. The night the Titanic sank. Dr. Dodge said the disaster started when he and his wife were woken up by a huge crash, the ship hitting the iceberg. At first, they were told everything was fine, so he tried to go back to bed, but he was too restless and wanted to find out more. On his second check, he found out that life jackets were urgently needed. As things got worse, he made sure his wife and son got onto one of the first lifeboats, even though he saw many boats being launched with lots of empty seats. This scary account is one of the most moving and detailed stories of that tragic night. On the night when the Titanic sank, there were 2,129 people on board. Sadly, the ship didn't have enough lifeboats for everyone. Even though it was a huge ship, it only had 20 lifeboats, and only 18 were used during the emergency. What's even sadder is that many lifeboats were launched without being full. The crew was scared that if they overloaded the lifeboats, they might break. This fear made the situation even worse. One story from that night is about Dr. Dodge. He got a spot in a lifeboat because an officer on one side of the ship was helping people get into the boats. But even this was risky. As their lifeboat was being lowered, a strong stream of water from the Titanic nearly swamped their boat. The men in the boat shouted for help, and luckily, they were heard. They avoided being lowered directly into the water jet and eventually reached safety. This shows the chaos and fear on the night the Titanic sank. After hitting the iceberg, panic broke out, especially around the lifeboats, which were the only way to survive. The rule to save women and children first was well meant, but it meant fewer people were saved than could have been. Many crew members were too scared to go back for more survivors after rowing away. They feared the boats might capsize or that they would be pulled under by the sinking ship. This left many people in the freezing water, where most of them died. Back then, the rules said the Titanic had enough lifeboats, but these rules were old and didn't consider such a large ship with so many people. Even worse, the White Star Line, which owned the Titanic, cared more about how the ship looked than about safety. They thought too many lifeboats would make the ship look less luxurious. People believed that, in an emergency, the Titanic would stay afloat long enough to get everyone off safely. But the disaster happened much faster than they thought, showing just how wrong their safety measures were. This has led to many discussions about why the ship wasn't better prepared with enough lifeboats. But this wasn't the only problem. A hidden fire had been burning for days in one of the coal storage rooms, making the ship even weaker. When the Iceberg ripped open the hull, the Titanic was doomed. As the ship broke in two and sank, it became clear that the safety measures were terribly inadequate. The decisions made prioritized looks and old rules over the safety of everyone on board. This turned what was one of the most advanced ships of its time into a tragic lesson in disaster preparedness and human error. The Titanic started taking in water at its lowest levels, making it tilt dangerously to one side. Given the ship's huge length, over 882 feet, a lot of water was needed to upset its balance. This tilt put too much pressure on the ship's structure, especially in the middle. As the ship sank, the truth of the tragedy became clear: the catastrophic failure of the Titanic. By around 2:17 a.m., just moments after hitting an iceberg, the ship's structure couldn't take it anymore. The middle of the Titanic cracked loudly and broke apart between its big smokestacks. This happened because the bottom part of the hull, particularly the iron rivets, was of poor quality. It's surprising that such a grand and expensive ship was built with cheap materials. Experts and historians are still puzzled by these choices made during its construction. It's debated whether the ship breaking apart made it sink faster, but it was a crucial and tragic moment. Witnesses in the freezing water or in lifeboats heard a series of loud cracks. They watched in horror as the back of the Titanic rose briefly before sinking slowly into the icy Atlantic, taking many lives. Amidst the chaos, people wondered where Captain Edward John Smith was. His fate during these terrifying moments is much discussed. After the collision, he was seen heading toward the bridge, starting a nightmare. Captain Smith, a seasoned seaman with over 40 years at sea, must have realized how serious the situation was. He had skipped important safety drills like lifeboat training for the crew and passengers, a choice that turned out to be disastrous. If there had been proper drills, maybe more lives could have been saved. As the Titanic sank, Captain Smith was reportedly involved in rescue efforts. Some say he saved a baby by swimming it to a lifeboat. When offered a chance to be rescued, he supposedly refused, choosing to stay with his ship, an act seen by some as very brave. However, other accounts suggest he was missing when his leadership was most needed, casting doubt on his legacy. The truth about Captain Smith's actions is still hotly debated, but this wasn't the end of the mystery. There's an intriguing story that Captain Smith survived and lived on a remote island under a new identity. While fascinating, this theory lacks proof and is generally considered a myth. Captain Smith's story and the Titanic continue to evoke strong emotions and discussions. Some see him as a hero, others as someone who failed when it mattered most. The uncertainty about his final moments adds to the legend of the Titanic, a tale of heroism, tragedy, and the relentless search for the truth. Decades later, finding the Titanic's wreck added a new chapter to this story. In the mid-20th century, with better technology, a serious search was possible. Led by Robert Ballard, an American and French team on the U.S. Navy ship Cunard undertook this mission. Using a high-tech deep-sea camera, the Argo, they reached depths of about 13,000 feet and, for the first time since 1912, saw the Titanic lying split in two on the ocean floor, a poignant reminder of the disaster. Seeing the Titanic shipwreck in full for the first time is a big deal in maritime history. Even though it's been over 100 years since the Titanic sank, it still fascinates people. Recently, a mapping company released the first complete digital image of the Titanic, giving us a whole new view of this famous shipwreck. Before this, explorers and historians could only see parts of the Titanic, discovered on September 1st, 1985. The wreck is huge and in a remote part of the ocean, making it hard to document fully. But now, with advanced technology, we can see every part of the shipwreck clearly. Magellan led this technological breakthrough. Their innovative methods let researchers examine the front, back, and debris around the Titanic. They made a digital replica of the entire site, allowing us to study it like never before. This new visual representation shows the size and sadness of the wreck and reveals details we hadn't seen before. This project is one of the most extensive underwater explorations ever. It collected 16 terabytes of data and over 715,000 high-quality photos and videos. This massive amount of new digital imagery has excited scientists and historians, helping them explore parts of the shipwreck that were hard to reach or unclear before. Could the Titanic tragedy have been completely avoided if all the warning signs had been heeded? Let us know your views in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe for more.